Peace talks between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia are underway in Abu Dhabi after Moscow's major energy attack on Kyiv. It's the second round of trilateral talks aimed at ending the war. Now, officials say the negotiations will be broken up into two parts and are expected to last until Thursday. ABC's Patrick Reevell and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy have more on that. Hi to you both. So, Patrick, what's the latest on these talks?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, this second round of trilateral talks between Russia, the US and Ukraine is underway in Abu Dhabi. As you say, it is only the second time that they've been meeting in this format, and that has created some sort of optimism around them. But I think in reality, there's very little hope going into them for any real significant progress. And that's because all sides have made clear that still this sticking point of territory remains. And that is Russia's demand that Ukraine hand over all of its eastern Donbass region. Ukraine has refused to do that because it sees it as militarily suicidal, that it would be making it far easier for Russia to reinvade in the future. The delegation on the Ukrainian side is being led by Kirill Budanov, who's the former head of Ukrainian military intelligence, who now runs the office of President Zelensky. And there has been some reporting in Ukrainian media that the tone of the talks, at least now, it tends to be kind of more substantive, more concrete, and that the Russians give less historical lectures than they used to before. We also know that the Ukrainian side has been trying to negotiate a pause on strikes on energy infrastructure. Obviously, we saw again that huge attack yesterday by Russia, which knocked out power for over 1 million people in Ukraine amid these freezing temperatures there. It's still very cold and very large numbers of people are still without heating. So that remains a very important point as well. But for now, there is not much expectation or sign that Russia is willing to stop striking energy infrastructure, Diane.
And Mick, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are there. But Russia recently broke the Trump-brokered energy truce just a few days in. So how much power does the U.S. have in trying to actually end this war?
Well, Diane, that really depends on what we're willing to do. Quite frankly, we had the Sanctioning Russia Act in the Senate now for many months with large bipartisan support. If Russia goes down this path of negotiation, which of course is a good thing, but as Patrick said, there's a lot of immovable positions coming from the Russians. If they continue to do that, and the U.S. and Europe would to add secondary sanctions to the ability of Russia to sell energy and therefore fund their war effort in Ukraine, that could make a difference. If we're not willing to use those type of leverage, then the United States is basically, passive moderator. And I think that is what needs to change to really change the trajectory of where these negotiations are headed.
And Mick, Ukraine says the talks will be split into two parts, first with the U.S. and then with Russian representatives. Why do it that way?
Well, it's plausible that they want to reduce the amount of emotion in the room. Quite frankly, the U.S. talking to Russia and Ukraine separately will potentially avoid serious clashes. And we can understand why that would be the case, with the U.S. being, in this sense, a moderator, so not somebody directly involved in the conflict. So that's potentially why this is being done. Certainly, for this to actually end in any kind of negotiated ceasefire or long-term peace, it will require the direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine.
And Patrick, what's the latest on the Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure after that attack?
Yeah, as we were talking about this huge attack yesterday that caused significant damage once again to Ukraine's power system. And, in the past few weeks, Russia has been much more successful in inflicting severe damage on Ukraine's energy grid. Outside Kyiv, at least one power station is now reported to be completely destroyed. So while they constantly are trying to repair it, and they are quite successful in that, really there are still hundreds of thousands of people across Ukraine without power and without heating amid very, very cold temperatures, Diane.
All right, Patrick Reevell, Mick Mulroy, thank you both.